All right, everyone, welcome to the Ravit show. Very happy to have my next guest today. It's none other than Brandon Foltz. I have been, obviously, you might have known him through his YouTube videos, as I know him through his YouTube videos. So can't wait for him to talk about his journey, about his YouTube videos, and much more. Today we'll be discussing a lot more than just his YouTube videos, but also about his profession, about what he does at Cengage, and all of that. And please feel free to get up your questions around statistics and data science and much more. So just a little about Brandon. Obviously, he is the senior learning designer at Cengage Learning. He's also known for designing award-winning, obviously, learning experience in statistics and data science. So we'll talk a lot around those aspects. Today we'll discuss about his journey, the life of a YouTube educator, and ethics of data science and machine learning, and much more. We're just not sticking to that. Also, just before having Brandon on, I wanted to let people know that today we are giving away 2 courses from none other than our gold partners, 365 Data Science. A big thank you to our partners. And now let's have the man here. Hey, Brandon, welcome to the Ravit show. Yes, you are here. We are live.
Are we live?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Ravit, it is so good to see you. Thank you for having me. I know we worked on this for a while.
Exactly.
And I'm glad to be here. First day of June, at least where I'm at. And this is exciting. So thank you for having me.
Oh, this is such a pleasure, having you. Obviously, I know half the India might have been, half the India is too much, but still there's many people who might be watching your videos, and we've learned from your YouTube a lot. So thanks for, always educating us there. But to start with, obviously, for those who have not known you, can you introduce yourself, Brandon?
Sure. Before I do that, can I have like 1 minute to give some shout outs and some kudos?
Yes, definitely. Please.
So obviously the first shout out I want to give is to all the learners out there, everybody that's out there chugging away, whether you're a college student, whether you're someone who is maybe doing a career change, maybe were laid off from your job and are out there learning to reskill yourself. We hear you, we see you, we know that you're out there, and we want to encourage you. So number one, kudos to you for hanging in there, and obviously let all of us know in the education space how we can support you. So I definitely want to do that. I also want to give kudos to all those that have helped during COVID. It's been a very hard time for everyone, and it's good to see us all rally around. Ravit, I'm happy to see you healthy. I hope your family is doing well. It's good to see that. And I also want to give a shout out to Kate for the awesome Dedicated conference. That was awesome. Awesome to see practitioners in the field and how they actually apply the things we learn in real life and how they actually do that in their business. And then the last shout out I want to do is for you, Ravit, because one of the hardest working people in live streaming. I know it takes a lot of work to do these things in the background that people aren't aware of. Now that I'm streaming, I see how much work goes into it. It's a ton of work to get your guests lined up and to get the questions ready and do all the technical stuff. And of course, you share so many resources on LinkedIn for learners to have a library of resources. So I want to give you a shout out for all the work you do.
Thank you very much, Brandon. That was real shout outs of the things that are happening today. So thanks for that. And yes, India is kind of in a better place, I can say very confidently, in terms of the COVID. We were very badly hit. And I used to actually see you posting about it daily, almost daily, and putting out your support for India. So thank you very much for doing that and always keeping a tab. And you also reached out to me personally that how are things and all of those things. So it's very well respected. Thank you very much, Brandon. And
Absolutely.
Now about yourself, we would love to know about what you do as an educator. What's more than your YouTube channel? But yeah, definitely wanting to know all about it.
I'm not that interesting. I'm really not, no. So where to begin in this sort of, saga that is what brought me onto YouTube. And it's a very interesting story. It's a story full of the human experience, I think. And I'm hoping that by sharing it, that can provide other people the motivation and the impetus to do what they dream of doing. And that's kind of where I'll start. So really quickly, I just want to point out that, my love for learners in India is just profound. Several years ago, I looked at my YouTube analytics and saw that like 20% of my viewership was from India alone. So I really made an effort to learn more about that, to really make sure my content was available to a lot of learners there, because there's so much going on, so much exciting things, up and coming, that I wanted to make sure that my content was best, for those learners. So
Yeah.
really, that actually stemmed from the viewers. That's where it started. So, I love you. I love all of you all there. I hope to make it there sometime soon. So,
Awesome.
where to even begin with how I even came to YouTube? It's kind of crazy. And if I think about it, it starts way, way, way back when I was a little bitty thing in the world. And, my parents, when I was born, they were 19 years old. They were kids themselves, basically. They didn't really have two nickels to rub together. So, but they did believe in the power of education. So when we were young, me and my brother, my parents, who've been married 45 years, they're still going. Even in the face of adversity, they're still going. They focused on our education. They knew that was our way. So before we were even old enough for formal school, they had us in what's called nursery school. They had us in all kinds of other stuff and programs, because that was our way. So all my toys were educational toys. A lot of trivia type games. A lot of the toys I had were like how to build things and learn things. And that's kind of where it started. And even through like elementary school, I was the crazy student who couldn't wait to go back to school after the summer. It's like, great, we're going back to school now. And everybody else is like, oh, we're going back to school. And I'm like, yes, we're going back to school, because I just loved it, so much.
That excitement.
And I think that was really sort of the beginning of my love and passion for education, because whatever a learner I am, I'm actually, whatever teacher I am, I'm actually a learner first.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think
just absorb stuff.
Yeah, I think definitely that kind of brings in a very important thing which you have seen in your early childhood itself, that you were always excited about it. But yeah, I'll let you continue, Brandon.
Yeah, so I fell in love with the process of discovery and learning about the world. Part of the math and science focus for me was the time I grew up in. So during that time, I'm like 45 years old now, but during that time, it was sort of the space shuttle age and the Voyager 1, Voyager 2 age. So I grew up watching the first shuttle launches, and I grew up watching the pictures from Voyager 1 and 2 come back, and just being amazed that human beings could do that. So I fell in love with math and science from that point forward. And eventually I went through, my schooling, and I ended up doing my bachelor's degree in math and science education. That was sort of like the first step.
Yeah.
And from there, I've always been in education. I've never done really anything else in my entire life. My master's degrry is in education. My almost PhD, that's another story, is in education. So it's just what that's what I love to do. People just find their thing. And I just love to learn and then love to share that knowledge with as many people as possible. And then that led into the YouTube channel, which is a whole nother interesting story.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think definitely your purpose when you say about, first of all, obviously your love for education is clearly seen, Brandon, obviously with the passion that you kind of teach, your videos that go out. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, obviously I put a link of Brandon's YouTube channel up there in the post. They can have a look at it with 242,000 subscribers. How does it feel, Brandon? And how long did it take for you to reach here? And yeah, how does it feel?
Yeah, it's been a long journey, and I'll kind of tell you kind of like how I feel now. But I do think it's important for viewers to understand kind of how my YouTube channel came to be, because it really came out of a dark place. Like it was I was at a really, really, really low point in my life. So it was, 2009, 10, 11, and that time frame. I was at my PhD program at Indiana University, and I have my tea in my Indiana
Wow.
University mug here. Anyway, so I was working on my PhD there, and the bottom fell out of everything. Right? We had the Great Recession.
Yeah, exactly.
There was no money. There was no grant money. There was no enrollments. It declined. Everything was just a mess.
Oh my.
So I ended up back at my parents' house. I was 35, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're multi-generational households. There's nothing wrong with that. But went from a PhD program to my parents' basement. So I kind of ended up where I started. I was in poor health, poor mental health. I felt like a failure, a total failure. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I started applying for positions at that time. Of course, during the recession, there were hundreds of individuals for every open position at that time. It was horrendous to try to even apply for a job. I applied for a job and I went to this warehouse just for a part-time job or just something to hold me over. And I went in a full suit, like got my hair cut, went to a full suit, and like the job at that time was to see if two numbers matched on the packages. And I felt like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I felt so, I don't even know how to describe how I felt, but I went out to my car and I cried. And I was in such a distraught state. So what I did is I'm sitting there in my parents' basement. I'm like, you know what? I have a computer, I have Camtasia, and YouTube is free. And I'm pretty good at explaining things. I've been doing it my whole life, tutoring, teaching, all that kinds of stuff. So I was like, I have these things. And there's a coffee shop down the road. Let's see what happens. And I think that was 9 years ago. I started uploading videos, which is terrifying because if people don't like them, they tell you. They're like, this sucks, So that's kind of when it started. And it started slowly to build up. And I remember I went on a job interview during that time. And I walked into this conference room and there was like 4 people there doing the interview. And I had the projector on. And I pulled up my YouTube channel at that time. And I had 1,000 subscribers. And I thought I was like the best educator on earth. I thought this was like the coolest thing. I have 1,000 subscribers. Look at this, Obviously, they didn't end up getting the job, but that's kind of where it started. And then from there, it just slowly built. And then one recruiter saw my YouTube channel at that time, and that led to my first full-time position out of that dark period.
Wow.
So that was the first sort of step. And then 9 months later, another recruiter saw it, and that led to my current position at Cengage. Now, I'm very proud of that hard work, but I'm also very lucky that I have a loving, supportive family. So my parents never doubted me. They always believed in me. I always believed in myself that I could do something like that. I have a fantastic brother who's also a great friend. I have supportive friends. So I have a group of people around me that helped me get there. And I would go to Starbucks down the road and sit there for 8 hours straight, downing coffee and making YouTube videos. I'd make the PowerPoint there. I'd go home and record it. The next day, I'd go back, do another one, record it. I just kept chugging. And, it led to that. And every viewer out there, I want everyone to know that you can do, it's in you. Even in that darkest time, if you surround yourself with good people, believe in what you can do, find what you're good at, it is in you. You just have to nurture it and let it out. And we should all look to doing that. It's just like you, Ravit. I'm sure at some point you made this decision. Am I crazy? Or am I going to do a live stream on the internet? You made that decision at some point. I'd love to hear about that. So it's sort of the same idea. And then here I am 9 years later.
No, I think definitely I kind of resonate with very well, because there's a saying, when you are in that dark position, you think the best. And when you start thinking the best? Obviously, in 9 years, we've seen the results for you, your brand, obviously where you're working. All of them have just been, there's been a drastical change to growth, in which is amazing. So Brandon, obviously I have a few more questions, but there are many questions that are being asked. So let's just take a few questions. Akshay is here. Akshay had a question around about your YouTube channel. What inspired you to start your YouTube channel? Obviously you've explained that, but what excites you to be this consistent and educate the world?
What
Like,
excites me, what
yeah.
excites me is seeing just one comment on one video, just one comment on one video, one person out there that says watching that video helped them.
Wow.
That's it. That's all I need. That's all that motivates me. And like, when I was doing my teaching and especially doing a lot of private tutoring, it would just be me and that student sitting in the library doing finite math or whatever, and you could see that student just like grinding their doing this sort of thing, just trying to get it and trying to get it. And then I would explain it in a certain way, and then they got
Oh.
it. Like that, just
Yeah.
boom. It just made sense to them. And that's all
Wow.
I'm after. That's all I'm after. I'm not looking to be like a big YouTuber. I'm not looking to make you're not gonna make a lot of money on YouTube anyway. That's not why I do it. I do it just to hear and see that there's at least one person out there in the world somewhere that
Mm,
took one further step, and I was able to like nudge them along or hold their hand for a step or whatever. And like I've told you, I think in the past, I don't see my role on YouTube as taking someone from base camp Everest to the top of Mount Everest. That's
yeah.
not my role. My role is for them to be on their path. They come across an obstacle, maybe a crevasse or a little river or something like that, and they need a bridge. They need a little bridge to get across. So I help them get across. I am that little bridge, and then they go on their way up the mountain. And then I collapse, and then I rebuild for the next person that comes along to get them that little bit of step along their journey. And that's all I'm after. That's all I want to do. I'm
Wow.
actually a very like quiet person. I like, I'm sort of I'm not sort of a hermit, but sort of a monastic type person. I like quiet, simplicity, and stuff like that. I'm not looking to be a personality or anything like that. So that's what motivates me is that one other person out there in the world somewhere that needs the help, and I was able to help them, and then they go on their way, and that's it.
Wow. That's amazing. And yeah, Akshay does agree to that. And also we have someone, Sagarika here. That's fabulous. I've learned a lot from your channel. So there are people who have joined in who have known your channel. And Kunal Naik is here. You are an inspiration for data science YouTubers like me. What is your Okay, there's a question too. So what is your process that helps you consistently create videos, and how to do find the topics? How do you find the topics to create videos on? Interesting
Great
question.
question. Thank you. So, a couple of things. It's even more inspiring when I hear from someone who was encouraged to start their own YouTube channel or make their own Udemy course or something like that after seeing mine or even
Yeah.
someone else's. So, one purpose of an educator is to help inspire and create more educators. And when I can see that, when I see someone do that, that really, really makes me happy.
Yeah.
So as far as the process, one challenge, and we can talk about more challenges as we go, but one challenge I have as a YouTuber is that it's not my full-time job, right?
Hmm.
So Cengage learning is my full-time job. And
Exactly.
that's what gets the bulk of my time and attention, as it should, because that is my full-time job. They are compensating me to give the
Right.
best that I can to them, and they deserve that time. Of course they do. And my team members who I love deserve the best that I can offer. So
Exactly.
YouTube is something I can only do on the side. So basically, my process is that, I'll work my day hours at Cengage and stuff like that. So I do YouTube in the evenings and primarily on the weekends. So
Mm.
I will get up at like 6 a.m. and on the weekends, and
Oh
get
my.
to the coffee shop by 7 a.m. and start working. And usually I will have done a little bit of research during the week evenings, but then I do the majority of the video PowerPoint creation on the weekends very early in the morning where when it's quiet. I sip my coffee, sit there at it's a mile 42 coffee shop. So shout out to them in Loveland, Ohio. That's where I like to work. And that's where I do the majority of the PowerPoint work. And then usually like that Sunday evening or Monday, I'll record it and then get it captioned. And then so it's out Tuesday or Wednesday. That's kind of the process. Now, as far as topics go, usually what I do is look at my analytics and I say, what are most people looking for? What do they need the most help with?
Exactly.
And what topic will reach the most people? And then I will look at that topic and then run with it for as long as I can. And then when it comes to like a natural end, then I will look around and say, okay, well, now what? What do we want to do now? So right now I'm doing some more multiple regression. And when I feel like I've done all I can in that topic, then I'll reassess and do something else.
Okay, that sounds pretty logical in terms of understanding the traction for your videos and then creating on those lines itself, and or maybe just getting much further in the the game and creating some good content. So makes sense. Thanks for that question, Kunal. There's a follow-up question actually from someone else, which I would also want to ask from Surendra Jain. Which are your favorite YouTube channels and why? Very interesting.
Well, depends on if we're talking in the area of stats and data science or just in general. But of course, StatQuest, Josh does amazing work at StatQuest.
Wow.
So I should have given a kudos to Josh at
Yes.
StatQuest at the beginning. Very, very unique way of presenting things.
Bam. Yes.
Obviously super smart, super creative. He does a lot of things that I could not do. I'm not comfortable doing. Even though even though I am a musician too. I just tend to I'm just keep my stuff as simple as possible. But Josh does great work at StatQuest, and all of us as learners are better off because of having his channel, and that's fantastic.
Wow.
And then so on. So that's one I can think of off the top of my head, and there are others I've watched intermittently. Right, that's how YouTube
Yeah.
works. We kind of watch a channel for a little while for something we need, and then
Exactly.
we kind of go off of that. But honestly, on YouTube, I watch all kinds of different stuff. There's so many. There's so many. I watch a lot of videos, obviously, on how to create videos and audio and video production and stuff like that. I watch a lot of videos like that. There are many YouTube creators that
Yeah.
I may not need their content at the present moment, but they are so dedicated to what they do, and they do such a good job on that content. I will watch anyway because I'm committed to keeping
Yeah.
up on whatever they're talking about, learning about. I may not need it right then necessarily, but I want to support them. I want to support them. So I watch all kinds of things on YouTube. It's hard to even pick out one.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, definitely. Someone else also mentioned about StatQuest, excellent resource. It really does. Joshua obviously is like the man. The way he sings and all of those things are fantastic. But talking of that, we have another question from YouTube by Ravi Akela. What excited you to invest your time in data science? Interesting.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, my love of math and science goes back to when I was a child.
Yeah.
So I've always enjoyed math and science, just in general. You know, um, and then when I went to go to YouTube and figure out what I could teach, I learned how to teach math and science in my undergraduate degree. So that's kind of what I
Yeah.
did. But then, as the world has changed since that time, we're talking, 20 years ago was when over 20 years ago was when I graduated from my undergrad, and there was barely internet then, so everything has changed so much, and we're flooded with data for good or bad, which maybe we could talk about. Um, it's become such a part of our lives, and because of that, a lot of people are going into those fields, and
Mm,
my work is a reaction actually to that. So, you know, my teaching of statistics on YouTube is really a way to fill in a need of a lot of individuals who are going into not only data science and ML and stuff like that, but everything is becoming more data. Everything.
Yeah.
Like me and my colleagues at Cengage talk about this all the time, that
Mm-hmm.
there will be a data scientist in all kinds of in all kinds of industries. So
So true.
the Washington Post and New York Times now have data scientists, where it was just before, journalists and editors and all the people that put.
Exactly.
Now they have data scientists. Every industry has data scientists. So there were
So
so many people going into that field. I just saw the need to help those people along as everything became more quantified,
mm-hmm.
and the quant courses became like more required. The quant programs are growing. So I just came in to help, to fill a need. So I married my love of math and science to the need in the education space, put those two together, and that's
Mm-hmm.
how the YouTube channel sort of came about.
Yeah, I think definitely it does. Make a lot of sense. Also, I had a question. Obviously, like you design courses on statistics and data science. So, how important do you think? Obviously, the statistics helps student to prepare for data science. Now we are getting into a phase where we'll talk a little about statistics. Obviously, I know you are a specialist out there, so I would want to know for the audience and for myself as well, that how important is statistics today. And I think there's a question in the audience too. What's your favorite topic in statistics? So yeah, why statistics, and what's your favorite topic?
My
Nice one.
favorite topic is regression.
Aggression.
Just all types of regression. It's so flexible. It's very generalizable. It's easy to understand and interpret. It's readily
Yep.
accessible in all of the software we have, even Excel, of course.
Yeah.
So regression, regression has changed the way we can make predictions, the way we can interpolate data points between other data.
Yeah.
We can do all kinds of stuff with regression. It's expandable. It's flexible. We can interpret it. So that's my favorite topic. What was the first part of the question?
So basically, the first part was from my end, where what obviously,
Oh,
why
yeah,
do
yeah,
you
yeah.
think statistics is important in data science?
Yeah, well, stats really is that fundamental way that helps us think about problems. I think. So there is a tendency to want to rush towards tools and programming languages and all
Yeah.
this other stuff, because it's sort of it's the sizzle, it's sort of the
Mhm.
flashy stuff like that. And those are
Yeah.
great skills to have, which I don't like. I'm not a programmer at all. That's not really my bread and butter.
Yeah.
But I think obviously having the stats background does a couple of things. One, I
Mm-hmm.
think it helps us interpret what we get from these models that we build.
Yeah.
Um, it helps us think about how what are the assumptions we make putting into them. Because again, there can be a very strong tendency to just say, "Oh, I have 100,000 observations and 37 variables. I'm just going to squish them all into
Mhm.
my ML model, and it'll spit out either a classifier or confusion matrix, or it'll spit out root mean square error, and then I'll pick the best one, and then that's it." Well, what thinking went into that beforehand? Like, are
Mm.
all 37 variables meaningful? Stuff like,
Got
things
it.
like, or
Yeah.
what assumptions were in there. So I think, like with EDA, obviously stats is very important when you're looking at all your variables before you even do anything. You can learn more about your data just by doing very simple exploratory data analysis and look at the
Mm.
shape of distributions, look at the correlations among variables and stuff like that. Then you may want to transform variables depending on, if they're skewed or something like that. You might transform them or bin some of them. But
Yeah.
that all happens way before, the somewhat easy part of
Mm-hmm.
just piping the data into some algorithm and it spits out whatever it's going to spit out. So I think
Yeah.
statistics helps with that, but it also helps us how to think about a problem. Like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? What are we trying to develop a model for? And then how in the end are we going to communicate that? Like, I think the most important concept, especially with regression, is just if you can understand what sum of squares are, Just that alone can get you miles if you really understand what it is and how it works
So
and how
true.
the output
Yeah.
is all put together. So I think stats does several things. You know,
Mhm.
the presuppositions. English is not my area of expertise, unfortunately. I did not do well in my English classes. But yeah, so teaching us how to think, how to interpret, and then the assumptions we
Mm.
make before putting data into these sorts of things, and how to collect data, by the way.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's how statistics is kind of super important, but doesn't it doesn't make everyone run into it. So that's a different story altogether. But talking of online education, I see an interesting question from Neeraj Satpal coming in. Brandon Foltz, to what extent the migration of new platforms has caused modification in the attitudes of education administrators, instructors, and learners on the significance of online learning? Very interesting question.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and I think COVID had accelerated something that was
Mm,
already sort of happening, right?
okay.
So here I might say some things that are a bit controversial, and that's okay. You know, we can disagree on certain things. Um, I don't think online education will ever replace in-person education.
Hmm.
Online education is great in that it greatly democratizes education. It makes it accessible to many more people who may not have had access to it before.
Mm,
Um, there's a lot of innovation in the ways that we can do online education and so forth. But I don't think there's a replacement for being in a classroom with your students or with your instructors, because as an educator, I can tell as much from my students by their body
yeah.
language, by their voice, by the way they fidget in their seat, whether or not
Mm,
whether or not they're getting something or whatever else. In the classroom, it's usually easier to pivot, and it's
yeah,
easier to improvise. It's easier to empathize, also in
exactly.
person as well.
Mm,
So, online education is a great addition to the education space, but
right.
in-person education, depending on the topic and stuff like that, um, is usually better in terms of just an educational experience, given if it's available. So online education is much better than not having access to anything. Of course it is,
Hmm.
but I do think there is something special, and maybe it's just my age, honestly. There is something special about in-person
Yeah.
learning, whether that's a classroom or just one-on-one. I get people that ask me all the time if I do online sort of tutoring, and I don't have time, number one. But
Hmm.
but number two, for me, the magic in tutoring happens with two people sitting down at a table somewhere and working through stuff, like in
Yeah.
person. That's where the magic happens. So, and I just don't feel the same sort of thing in online education. Now, in terms of on the administrator side, online education can be a bit more economically beneficial. It can be a bit
Mm,
cheaper to teach online.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
in some courses might be best taught online. So if it's like an intro survey course or something like that, that
Yeah.
might be a good candidate to do that. It's flexible; people can do it um, whenever they want. So it's just a balance.
Balance. Yeah.
It just depends. It just
It
depends.
yeah, and also it is kind of accessible much better in terms of the online, and but yeah, definitely your opinion of having in-person education is kind of very different from what you think is online education. It does make sense because you miss the fun as well, right? Being in a classroom and sitting with your folks out there, there's a different type of learning rather than sitting just hanging out around just with your laptop and sitting alone. It's a complete different story. So yeah, relatable there, very much, Brandon.
Yeah, in-person education brings additional things beyond just the
Exactly.
class. If I think of all my learning experiences, obviously
Mhm.
growing up being in school, I was with my friends, and the social aspect of education was just as important as the sort of informational aspect of
Right.
education. Learning the process of working together with people, um, and you know getting to know my teachers and stuff like that. That was all part of it. And in higher ed, it's the same way. In higher education, yeah, you can go to classes, show up your classes, whatever they might be. But as someone who loves college campuses, like if I could, I
Right.
would just go stay and live on a college campus my whole life, which basically
Mhm.
I did. But but the culture of a campus, you know, even if you can't live there full time, but just being around and on it from time to time, there's so much more going on.
Exactly.
There's so much more going on with activities and programming and clubs and depending on where you are, maybe athletics, and then the
Very true.
community it's in. Like I fell in love with Bloomington, Indiana, which is where Indiana University is. I love I mean, if I talk too much about it, I
Mhm.
will start crying. But it's like Bloomington is such a beautiful place as a community
Mm.
that the university is in, you know. So that is also, something to sort of to get
Yeah.
from it. But not everyone can do that. I understand that. Not everyone could do that. But there's a lot else that's going on in education besides just education.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. Okay, talking about education and talking about you being an educator, there was an interesting question from Aditi. What are the challenges you face as an educator? Very interesting.
Yeah, very good question. So on YouTube, I'm a YouTube educator now. It's sort of I've adapted with
Mm.
the times, But even teaching in person, it was hard to get every student to buy in and see the value because really, oftentimes what you're doing is you're asking students to trust you
Yeah.
that what you're doing now will pay off in the future. And
Right.
human beings, especially modern humans, are not really good at that. Like we're like immediate, instant gratification, like now, now, now.
Hmm.
Now that does go over into the YouTube space too, where there are some people who come on YouTube to learn that want expect to be able to learn all those statistics in
Yeah.
like 90 minutes. Well, that
Mm.
it doesn't work that way. It
Exactly.
it takes time. So I think there are a lot of students, and I understand people are pressed for time and stuff like that. Um, but it's just also a matter of choice. If you have 30 minutes to watch a show on Netflix, there's also 30 minutes to watch some videos on YouTube. It's just your choice. You just have made the choice. So I think learners expect to learn things maybe a bit too quickly, and that can be frustrating
Yeah.
because it does take time. Um, the other thing is just like there's a lot of there's so much out there that sometimes it's hard for students to find the thing that resonates with them. And they spend a lot of time just sort of searching around, sort of finding,
Yeah.
what that is, but also the thing we mentioned before where education can be a very valuable social thing, learning experience.
Yeah.
When you're
Exactly.
sitting alone watching a YouTube channel, you kind of lose some of that. I try to bring some of the humanity back
Hmm.
into, my videos and stuff. But I think the biggest thing is just that, sometimes online learners expect to have 2 hours of material,
Hmm.
traditionally crammed into like 6 minutes. And it just doesn't, long lifetime learning just doesn't work,
That
sort
way.
of
Yeah.
that way. And it can be frustrating, but I understand where people come from. But I just kind of stick true to what I
Hmm.
do. And the people that want to stay around will, and those
Yeah.
who don't won't.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about the short way always, where in 90 minutes or in obviously 100 minutes you can achieve all of the statistics. Definitely, how much time it goes for you to in making, it's much more than that. If someone's actually tuning into your YouTube and learning about it, there's a process, and that's why there are episodes and there are seasons to learning as well.
Yeah,
So
and the other challenge, really quickly, I just thought of
yeah.
it. The other challenge as an educator is trying to make a living at it. Um,
Yeah.
there's also the assumption that all education should be free,
Oh my.
and which that's great, but there are people that spend dozens and dozens and sometimes hundreds. And Josh talked about this and other things he's done. How long it takes to create one 10-minute video? It takes dozens of hours,
Exactly.
and you can't like we all have like bills, like there's life, and not everyone can work for free to create educational content when the expectation is that it all should be free.
Oh,
So that's a real challenge. I mean, I wish I had 36 hours in a day and no bills, but
now, sorry, Brendan, just a second. Abhishek says lost the audio. I don't think so. If we have lost the audio, can someone just
I can hear.
say, yeah, I can hear you as well. But yeah, you were talking about ours. I don't think so. It's just for Abhishek, maybe.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's hard to, as an educator online, it's hard to make some sort of living at it. And that's why I sort of keep YouTube full time. If I were doing YouTube, keep YouTube part time. If I were doing YouTube full time, I would have to like create YouTube videos. I'd have to create Udemy courses. I would have to create other online sort of paid courses. I'd have to market them. I'd have to bombard everyone's email inbox saying, "Hey, I released this new course. Go, please buy it." I'd have to like beg for money. I'd have to do all this other stuff, and in the end, I would have no time to educate because I would
Mhm.
be so busy with the other stuff. I don't like asking people for money at all.
Mhm.
So keeping the YouTube channel part time on the side allows me to not have to worry about the money part. So I have a
Yeah.
great job at Cengage. I have some other work that I do, so I don't have to worry about it, and that keeps it sort of pure in that respect. And just I take donations and stuff, of course, but um,
Yeah.
just making a living at it.
Yeah,
If
exactly. I think
if people were to do it full time, is very tough.
it's kind of tough, obviously. So, talking about challenges and obviously about education, Asmita Chatani had a question here. I feel that the most challenging part of being an educator is how to make the information seem interesting to the student and increase their curiosity. How do you come up with such techniques? Can you give some examples, Brandon? Nice question.
Yes, great question. So what I try to do is I try to do a balance. Like I don't. It's not my style to be an edutainer, to to do things that borderline entertainment. Now some people might find that very engaging, other people find it
Mhm.
really annoying. So I just made the decision to keep my content very informational and respect people's time and you know just do it. But the way I try to make it interesting is to use real kind of world examples. you
Mhm.
know so I will make up problems and then set them in different parts of the world usually, and you make up a problem that we try to solve together, excuse me, and then the student can take that interpretation, that solution out to wherever they go. But
Mhm.
in general, I try to make it helpful, clear, concise, and respect the learner's time above anything else, you know. And if I tend to think that if someone comes on, here's the thing: YouTube. Talk about sampling. Ready? Talk about sampling technique.
Right.
If someone comes on YouTube looking for help with a statistics problem, it's a self-selecting sample.
Mhm.
They these people aren't going out looking at this stuff at random. They're coming to look for something because they need help with it. So they're already engaged. They're already
Right.
willing to hear what you have to say because they have a problem they need to solve.
True.
So, how do you solve that problem? So the interest part, to me, kind of takes care of itself if you see YouTube as a tool, as a resource, because they've already decided they need to come watch something. And look, honestly, there's a portion of like all YouTube learners that on some level they don't care about statistics. They don't
Mhm.
that's they need to get like an A. They need to get their homework done. They they need to do whatever. So that's why they're there. And
Right.
some of them might have an interest in statistics. And if they go on and do more advanced stuff, that's great. But some of them aren't there because they're interested in statistics. They're there because they need to pass a class.
Yeah.
And it's just that simple.
So true and so concise. Thanks for that answer, Brandon. I had an interesting question for you. Talking about obviously education, talking about platforms. how often do you actually go to conferences where you can actually learn? You actually gave a shout out today to Kate for Data Cated conference. So how much of how much do you believe in conferences, and how much do you visit conferences to learn something?
Great. So the great thing about the internet is that a lot of the conferences have gone online, and you
Yeah,
can you can you can do them virtually. Now, as part of my job at Cengage in the past has been the ability to go to conferences for various
hmm
reasons. We go to meet with customers, we go to meet with professors,
yeah,
have focus groups, students. We'll stand in our booth, kind of where we have our stuff. But also at certain times, we'd have ability to go to sessions. So I would pick the sessions in the conference that were
mm.
focused on education. So, one of my favorite conferences that's actually gone online is
hmm
the Jump conference, JSM conference,
hmm
and Joint Statistical Meeting. I think it's the acronym. It usually occurs at late in July. So I'm
hmm
a member of the ASA, so it's the American Statistical Association. So I go to that conference now. It's virtual, and there's some great things in there about education. So I always
yeah,
try to focus on the education sessions if I go to a conference in person or virtually, just to see what's going on. And if there's nothing else in the education for that time slot, I will go to something that I find interesting. So I
yeah,
think conferences can be very beneficial, but it's not enough just to go. You have to like try to interact, network, which is a little bit harder in the virtual space,
yeah.
and then reflect on why you were there, and then take some of those things with you sort of into your job. So, yes, I love conferences, especially when they're in person.
Awesome. Nothing like it. And talking about that, obviously, I know for a fact that Cengage is obviously a learning platform. So, wanted to know a little about it. If you can give us a run through the website, and also wanted to know about something which I just learned out of obviously talking to you, where Pact and Cengage kind of meets at a common ground. So, wanted to learn more about that, Brandon.
Sure. So let me just do a disclaimer. I am not here speaking for Cengage,
Oh,
Cengage Learning
yes.
at all. I'm here representing myself. However,
Yes.
my day job and my YouTube stuff, and actually what Ravit does, kind of overlap in weird ways. But
Yeah.
so I'm a learning designer is my title now, and so
Mm.
I work with our product team, an amazing, just stunningly amazing product
hmm
team to develop textbooks and then the online
Wow.
courseware where students do their homework and stuff like that in the decision sciences. So business statistics, business
Wow.
analytics, operations, supply chain, project management. All the we have a new data visualization book that should be out anytime, and I'm working on the courseware actually right now. Is what I'm doing at work, and
Fantastic.
then and I also do the. I'm also on the finance list. I don't do as much
Mm.
on the finance list, so intro to finance, stuff like that. So that's kind of my day job. I've been at Cengage for about 7.5 years now. So I work on the digital side. I don't make the books or anything. I work on the digital side. So I don't have
Yeah.
I don't make videos like me on videos. However, I handle almost all the video content that goes into those. So we have subject matter experts that make videos that I know and work with. So I do most of the editing on them. So I put in the annotations and little chat bubbles that I think are helpful. I work on the audio, making sure it looks good or sounds good and everything looks good. So that's
Lot
kind of
of
what
work.
I do a lot. I do a lot of video stuff that we put in our products. And our products have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos, hundreds of videos. So that's kind of what I do. Um, and then, actually, I don't know if we're going to talk about this now, but Cengage actually has a partnership with Pact. And
Exactly.
Ravit didn't even know. I don't think at
Obviously.
the time. So, um, yeah. So there's this really good partnership that Cengage has done with Pact. And Ravit, real quick, if you want to
Yeah.
add my screen.
Here we go. Yes.
So I wasn't really planning on doing this, but then when Ravit learned that this sort of worked this way, he was like, "Wow,
Exactly.
that's cool." So I think this is fair. This is fair to do. So the way Cengage works now, by the way, is it's a
Mm.
subscription. So the student pays like a flat fee, and then they get everything. whether you have one course or 5, it's one flat fee per semester. However, there's a partnership with Pact. So if I were to, if I had my textbooks and everything in here,
Mm-hmm.
but let's say, I want to learn about Power BI, I can just put Power BI into the search.
So
You
cool.
see all all these Pact books come up. So let's say I want to do this cookbook, I can add it to my dashboard here, and it'll take a second. Now, if I go back to my dashboard, now I have this Pact book, and it's part of my
Exactly.
subscription. It's part of the unlimited subscription. So if I click on view, it'll take a second to open up,
Book is ready to read.
And there we go.
So cool.
And of course,
And that
we
is
have
for the
access.
complete library.
So it's
Wow.
it's hundreds and hundreds of titles. I'm not sure
Wow.
the full list, but yeah, it's a great resource that it kind of let Ravit know existed, and I didn't know a whole
Yeah.
lot about it myself. So if there's something maybe in the textbook that isn't covered maybe to the extent somebody would want, then they could add a Pact book and have access to it, and it's all wrapped up into the one subscription sort of thing. So I just thought I would mention that because of what Ravit does and what I do. There's actually an overlap
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
So yeah.
Such a cool thing, right? I didn't even know about it, and it was Brandon a few weeks back when he introduced, and he told me that there's obviously a complete library access to Cengage for Pact by Pact, so which is the coolest thing. But it was
Yeah,
fantastic talking to you, Brandon.
could you do
But
me one
yeah,
favor real fast? Mark
yeah,
just posted a question. I think it's
yeah,
important to
exactly the
address
same
real
question
fast.
I wanted. Okay, so this is Mark's question here. Can you describe how balance the IP commercial aspects from your day job with your YouTube channel? Do you simply have your day job and have them agree to let you free publish the YouTube content? Very important.
Yeah, so what I do at Cengage and what I do on YouTube are completely separate. There's no
Exactly.
there's no overlap. I don't None of my YouTube content is in Cengage stuff. So I don't use Cengage to promote my YouTube channel. And in theory, Cengage doesn't use my YouTube channel to sell books.
Nothing
Does
at
that
all.
does that happen? Probably it might happen, but there's no official agreement between the two. There's a hard wall between those. So I was doing YouTube long before I ever worked at Cengage, and actually it was a YouTube channel that helped me attain the job at Cengage. So in theory, there's a strict wall between the two, and there are no IP issues or concerns or anything because they're two separate things.
Okay. One last question that I would take from the audience, Brandon. Thanks for the clarification where you and Cengage are kind of different. Clarifies a lot of things. So Kunal Naik here in this knowledge air, how to deal with instant gratification and build skill to execute and apply their learning.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, some platforms and educational
Ah,
spaces have tried using like quick hits, quick little bursts of content, and things like gamification um,
mm,
to do that. So the evolution of Khan Academy in that sort of way to give little badges and these things like this is to sort of gamify it. That's one way to deal with the instant gratification aspect of it. On YouTube, that doesn't work as well. What I do try to do on YouTube is, keep it moving. So we'll usually kind of go over a topic, kind of the background, then we'll like pull in some data, and most of the time I actually make the data available. You can download it and follow along if you want. Look at the output, interpret it, and then go on. So I try to keep it sort of moving along so it doesn't dwell on one thing, and that kind of keeps sort of the ball rolling in
rolling.
terms of the content. Yeah, and then
Right.
how they execute it. Like I said, a lot of the data sets I use in my videos, I make downloadable in my website and just download it for free. It's using an Excel file. And look, a lot of the motivation and stuff like that, I hate to say it, a lot of it has to just come from within. And it just sometimes it's just you just have to like stick to it and grind it out and develop for yourself a learning plan. Maybe you do something for like 20 minutes, go take a break, do something else, come back. If it's hard to concentrate, everyone has to develop their own learning rhythm, but that's on the learner's end, you know. But I think just keeping the
Yeah.
content concise and moving along is one way.
Okay. Yeah, it totally makes sense. Also, Rishi was here. He says, "Hi, Brandon. I started watching your channel for statistics. I would like to thank you for making such videos which are crisp and easy to understand."
Well, you're welcome, Rishi, and the thanks is all mine.
Awesome,
Thanks is all mine.
Brandon. But this was an amazing session. I can't wait to have you back on the Ravit Show. I already planned for 2.0 visit where we can talk much more deeper into your YouTube channel and about Cengage. And for everyone, yes, like Brandon mentioned, this wasn't paid by Cengage or nothing to do with Cengage. It was just about Brandon's journey and about what he has done. And I just wanted to thank him for all the education that he's spreading for free on YouTube. And all the education doesn't come free, like he mentions, but we have Brandon's channel and keep showing some love to him. One last question, Brandon, for everyone that I would want to ask on everyone's behalf here would be, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you, if they want to learn about obviously YouTubing and all of those things? Which is the best medium to reach out to you?
The best medium is LinkedIn. So I
Awesome.
don't have any other social media. I deleted it all for my no Facebook, Twitter. I deleted it all because was making me mentally unhealthy. So I deleted all that. So LinkedIn is the best place. Of course, YouTube
Awesome.
and YouTube comments are good places. And then on my website, there's a contact form that you can also use. So those are the three best ways.
Awesome. It was nice talking to you, Brandon. Thanks for
You
all
too,
the
Ravit.
information. And thank you, everyone, for joining in. It was such a pleasure. And see you next time, Brandon.
See you next time. Bye bye, everybody.
Yeah, bye.